but her husband was nowhere to be seen. She let out a sigh and moved into the washroom to change. After changing into comfortable pajamas, she made her way towards her mother-in-law's room. As soon as Wine came to her bedroom, she heard her sister-in-law's voice. "You can't sit like this for the whole night, Mom." She held Mrs. Kim's frail hands. "Can you imagine how Wine would have been feeling? I didn't expect this from Taehyung." Her voice was filled with weariness. Wine walked inside the room. "Did you find anything about your brother?" she asked in a serious tone. 𝐊𝐿𝐴 stood facing her and shook her head in denial. "Is his phone off or is he not answering?" 𝐊𝐿𝐴 bit her lips before responding. "He's not answering." Wine nodded. "I understand your brother wasn't ready to marry me, but why? You're going to answer me for that," she said to both of them. Her tone surprised Mrs. Kim and 𝐊𝐿𝐴, causing them to glance at each other. "I know the reason must be a girl whom you didn't like, but why didn't you inform us before sending the proposal?" "No, Wine, it's not like that." 𝐊𝐿𝐴 was the first one to react. Mrs. Kim held her hand. "No, 𝐊𝐿𝐴, we don't have to lie anymore," she said in a low tone and shifted her gaze to Wine. "Please forgive us, child." She pressed her palms together in front of her. Wine was stunned. Before coming here, she didn't have any good image of her in-laws. After seeing Taehyung's attitude through the wedding and hearing about her friends and cousins how cruel in-laws could be, Wine thought they would always fight. But here she could see the sincerity in Mrs. Kim's eyes. "Please don't do this. You're like a mother to me," she said, looking away. Mrs. Kim smiled faintly. "Both of us thought Taehyung would forget Evelyn after seeing a beautiful wife like you. But that was just our estimation. We did force him to marry you. However, by his behavior, he made it clear to us that this marriage means nothing to him." She spoke, blinking away her tears. "You should have thought of it earlier," she said bitterly. "Who is she? Why don't you like her?" She was 𝐊𝐿𝐴's ex-sister. After seeing Taehyung and Evelyn's interest in each other, we fixed their marriage. Evelyn couldn't accept the fact that Terence would give time to 𝐊𝐴. After all, Evelyn was his beloved sister, and she manipulated Terence against 𝐊𝐴. He went abroad and later committed suicide, but Evelyn blamed 𝐊𝐴. She said 𝐊𝐴 cheated on him and he couldn't take it. Now tell me, how could I accept the girl who destroyed my daughter's life and reputation? Then why is your son madly in love with the girl who ruined your daughter's happiness?" she asked with a frown. "He thinks Evelyn is right and 𝐊𝐴 is wrong. He's blinded by love." Suddenly, Carol's thought crossed Wine's mind. Her face went gloomy, thinking how her brother was blinded by Stella's sugar-coated words. That's why he was rushing to marry her off. She let out a sigh, knowing she couldn't be impulsive. Neither could she tell her brother anything. "Anyways, don't stress out yourself, Oni. Make sure Mom sleeps, and so do you. Your brother hasn't taken any of his belongings with him. This is just a way to show that he's mad. In the end, he has to come here." She spoke softly. Mrs. Kim and 𝐊𝐴 sank into the depths of regret. They were dismissed to their rooms. Wine wanted to think wisely rather than being impulsive. Next morning, Wine just freshened up when she heard the door banging. She opened the door and saw 𝐊𝐴 with a wide smile. "Wine, Taehyung is back," she said breathlessly. Wine raised her brows. "You're so happy, as if he has returned after winning a Grammy Award." She shook her head. "I understand your feelings, Wine, but you have to think wisely. He is a fool. You share a very strong..." She cut her off. "He is not a fool, Umi. He is a grown man who left his bride on his wedding night just for some other girl," she said bitterly. 𝐊𝐴 bit her lips. "You're right. I was too impulsive just now. Mom she stopped seeing Taehyung, who just ended. I'll leave you both," she dressed. She turned around to leave. "Only wait," 𝐊𝐴 faced her. "Last night all of you were so stressed that you forgot to ask me if I have eaten well. I'm starving. Please prepare breakfast for me." She didn't spare Taehyung a glance, as if he didn't even exist. "Sure, I'll make it myself. Is there anything specific you want to eat?" "No, anything would be fine." 𝐊𝐴 nodded with a smile and walked out, closing the door. Wine turned to face Taehyung, who was standing in front of the vanity table, taking off his wristwatch. "I don't care if you're happy or sad, willing or not, but you must attend our reception. Aren't you mute? Are you? What if you are and I have been deceived here too?" she said, faking a surprised expression. Him passed her a cold glare but didn't speak. You are deaf as well, she said mockingly. Shut up, he said benignly. Wow, look at the audacity. I have been deceived here and you are asking me to shut up. She spoke sharply. Mom and Kyla have deceived you. I told them I didn't want to marry you. Blame them, not me. It was your responsibility to inform us. You have married me. You are to be blamed. She said, staring right into his eyes. Taehyung chuckled and squinted towards her. Even if you blame me, who cares? He said in a low tone, making her blood boil in rage. But Wine composed herself. It was not a time to be impulsive. Taehyung was unburdening his shirt when he heard her murmuring, bloody lovesick. He held her arm and pulled her closer. She crashed on his bare chest. What are you doing? What did you just say? Wine let out a sigh and rolled her eyes. Firstly, button up your shirt, pervert. And secondly, I said you bloody lovesick. Got it? Now leave me. She pushed him. Taehyung shook his head. You're crazy. This is my room. You can't stop me if I go around naked or in clothes. He said and walked into the washroom. You're not alone here. This is my room as well. He heard her say from behind. Time skip. As Wine had said to Taehyung, he attended the reception, that too with a smile playing on his lips. After the reception day, they both were living like strangers. Taehyung goes to the office early in the morning and arrives home late at night. Wine and his mom assume he eats with Evelyn, spends time with her, and comes home just to sleep. Wine couldn't care less about him. She enjoys Mrs. Kim's company and does all the house chores, while Kyla goes to the office. Now Wine and Mrs. Kim were having lunch together when she spoke. Mom, do I feel it or is it true that Taehyung doesn't seem to like me? Mrs. Kim smiled slightly and nodded. He doesn't like her because I have adopted Kyla and Taehyung thinks I have given all the attention and care to Kyla, which was his right. Wine hummed in response. That's wrong, he shouldn't think that way. She shook her head, scrunching her face when an idea popped into her mind. Mom, what do you think of my cousin, brother, Carl? He's a nice guy. Stella is lucky to have him. She said with a smile. Wine chuckled. That's good. Then I would want Uni to be that lucky girl instead of Stella. Mrs. Kim stared at her in surprise. What do you mean, Wine? She held her hand. I mean, I want Uni to marry my brother. Mrs. Kim passed her a questioning look. Wine understood what she wanted to ask. Brother was just faking being with Stella because I didn't want to get married and he knew I didn't like Stella and I would do anything to stay away from her. I wanted to do a job and get my apartment, but as he promised my parents he wouldn't let me do anything and give me a life like a princess. She said with a smile. Mrs. Kim smiled happily. Talk to your brother first. Even if he doesn't agree, I'm grateful to you, Wine. She waved her hand. I'll just go and talk to brother, then we'll talk to Taehyung while convincing Uni is on me. That son of yours is so rude, I won't talk to him. Mrs. Kim nodded. I'm sorry, Wine. I did wrong to you by getting you married to Taehyung. He doesn't deserve you. She shook her head. Forget it, Mom. I'm glad at least I got a mother and sister figure due to this marriage. I have always longed for a family. Brother was always busy with business while Mom and Dad passed away too early. Her voice broke, but she composed herself. Mrs. Kim let out a sigh, thinking of talking to Taehyung tonight. At night, Wine talked to Carl and he didn't mind as he liked Kyla. She happily told Mrs. Kim to talk to Taehyung and keep it a secret from Kyla. Now Mrs. Kim and Wine was waiting for Taehyung to return. Wine was in the shared bedroom while Mrs. Kim was in the living room waiting for Taehyung. Now Taehyung entered the living room and froze seeing Mrs. Kim. Why are you still awake? He asked, coming close towards her and plopping on the couch. Do you think I can sleep peacefully knowing my son is with some other woman the whole night, turning his back on his wife? Disdain visible in her voice, Taehyung lazily laid out his legs. Who said that? This Wine must have complained to you. He spoke coldly. Shut up, don't talk nonsense about that poor girl. She doesn't say a word against you. She passed him a glare. Taehyung closed his eyes and rested his head on the headrest. Anyways, I want to talk to you. Whole week I barely get to see your face. Taehyung opened his eyes and fixed his gaze on her. Wine has suggested Carl's proposal for Kyla and I agree to it. I just wanted to inform you. He said straight with a frown. What? Yes, you heard me right. And I also want Kyla to get married and have family. She has suffered a lot. The skin spoke wearily. The most important thing here is you don't like Wine and can't move on from Evelyn. He avoided her gaze. I have decided that you'll divorce Wine and I will get her married to someone else. Then snapped his head in her direction with a surprised look. In an instant, his eyes turned dark and he stood. What do you mean, Mom? You forced me to get married and now you'll force me to divorce her? No, not gonna happen, he said furiously. Do you want to give a chance to your marriage or is it because of your ego? He ran his fingers through his hair and let out a sigh. Who is she to decide about 𝐿𝐴's life? You're just informing me. Doesn't my opinion matter? She's my sister after all. He ignored her question. I see you accept she's your sister, but your attitude towards her says otherwise, she said with a mocking smile. Come on, Mom, she's not my enemy. We just have some differences, that's it. He spoke annoyingly. I'm tired, I want to sleep. He kissed her forehead. You also go and have some sleep. Mrs. Kim nodded and stood, both of them dismissed to their bedrooms, and walked into their shared bedroom, his mom's words echoing in his ears. The thought of wine with another man filled him with an unfamiliar and unwelcome jealousy. He couldn't understand why the idea bothered him so much. He stood at the door taking off his coat and tie and unbuttoning his shirt when his gaze landed on Wine, who was oblivious to his presence. She was humming a soft tune, her body swaying gently, and she scrolled through her phone, her back turned on him. Lost in his thoughts, Taehyung unbuttoned his shirt, his gaze never leaving her. Wine turned around startled. When did you get here? He stepped close to her without answering her. Hey, what are you doing? She turned around as he let his shirt slide over his shoulders. Their mood go out, her cheeks heated, she could feel his presence behind her. Mom told me about 𝐿𝐴 and Carl. You shouldn't interfere in my sister's life. Wine clenched her jaw and turned to him. I never knew you cared so much about your sister, she said with a mocking smile, glaring at him and looking away in seconds, his heated gaze fixed on her. Anya will agree to it, don't worry. She loves me more than you. She flipped her hair dramatically, her gaze darting anywhere but his bare chest. Look at me when you talk to me. He stepped closer to her, her breath hitched. What are you doing, pervert? Stay away. You wear so little clothes. She tried to mask her nervousness with annoyance. Then smirked, holding her chin in his forefinger and lifted her face. Why does it bother you? His voice was low, teasing. Her nervousness thrilled him in ways he couldn't fully understand. It's inappropriate. She glared at him. He chuckled, wrapping his free hand around her waist and pulling her closer. Inappropriate or distracting? He arched a brow, his eyes darkening. One swallowed hard but remained composed. The tension between them thickening. Inappropriate. These stupid tricks don't distract me. She shook her head and pushed him. Stay within your limits. You don't see me as a wife, so don't expect me to act like one, because I don't care whatever you do. She walked to the bed, and yeah, I'll talk to Anya about brother's proposal tomorrow. I don't want her to waste her life. She laid on the bed, turning her back to him, then stared at her figure and let out a sigh. Time skip. Wine talked to 𝐿𝐴 about it the next day. At first, 𝐿𝐴 was hesitant, but then Wine earned her trust and told her to meet Carl once. They both got well, and soon their wedding was fixed. Meanwhile, Taehyung was usually seen at home. He arrives home before dinner and eats together with them. He apologized to 𝐿𝐴 for his behavior. Wine tries her best to ignore him, but he teases her and annoys her. Being pissed, Wine snaps at him only to earn his laughter. Today it was 𝐿𝐴 and Carl's wedding. The Wine made her way to them with a smile while Taehyung followed her. All the way throughout the function, she could feel his burning gaze on her. Congratulations on me, I'll miss you. She hugged 𝐿𝐴 and turned to Carl. Congrats, brother. She embraced him in a tight hug. Thank you. He kissed her forehead while he watched him from the corner of his eyes while embracing 𝐿𝐴. It's all because of you. He poked her nose. Wine chuckled when Mrs. Kim called her. She introduced her to some of her friends and relatives who couldn't attend their wedding. After some time, Wine stood in a corner, watching Carl and 𝐿𝐴 with a soft smile. Enjoying the view, he almost barked in her ear. Wine flinched and turned to him. You scared me. She snapped at him and slapped his arm. Taehyung laughed. Anyways, you look beautiful today, he said, gazing at her head to toe. I know, even the waiter said I look beautiful. She flipped her hair dramatically. Taehyung chuckled, shaking his head. I'm not kidding. She rolled her eyes. He moved close to her and held her hand. Wine passed him a confused and questioning gaze. Let's dance. Before Wine could protest, he led her to the dance floor. You're enjoying too much today, aren't you? He slipped his arm around her waist and pulled her close, holding her arm. Maybe I am. The warmth of his touch sent shivers down her spine. They softly swayed with the music. Why are you acting? I don't understand you. She huffed, looking away. I'm not acting. He pulled her even closer. Wine went quiet while Taehyung brushed the hair strands behind her ear, whispered, teasing comments in her ear that made her blush. He was different from past days. He laughed, smiled, and was carefree. I decided for us. We'll talk about it later. About us? Well then, what do you think? How many kids will we have? She glared at him. No, we, but you, that too with Evelyn. I'll have with someone I love. He leaned and bit her cheek when hissed. I want to talk to you about it. He then kissed her cheek. You're making a scene. She tried to pull away, but he held her tightly. They love it. Look at them. They say we are the perfect couple. He grinned and kissed her chin. Her word. Her gaze traveled to his shirt. First 4 buttons were wide open, his muscular chest peeking through it. Do you have some kind of allergy with clothes? He chuckled, pulling her closer. Cover it. He held her hand and placed it on his bare chest. Pam freed herself from his grip and walked away. Taehyung stood smiling. After some time, they called it a day. Mrs. Kim went home with the driver, while Wan had to go with Taehyung. They came out when it began raining. I don't want to go yet, she said, looking at the sky as a few raindrops fell on her face. There's a beach nearby. Do you want to see it? She nodded. They began walking when in a midway Wine stumbled and groaned. Taehyung swiftly held her. What happened? My heel broke, she huffed. He crouched down. You don't need to take off your shoes and give them to me dramatically. He looked up to her with a playful smile. Who said that I was giving you my shoes? He lifted her in his arms effortlessly. Taehyung put me down, she protested, but there was no real anger in her voice. Not a chance. You need a knight in shining armor, remember? He said teasingly. She puffed her cheeks and wrapped her arms around his neck. You're impossible. And you love it. He shot back, carrying her down the path towards the beach, leaving the hills behind. As they reached the sandy shore, Wine wiggled in his arms. All right, put me down. I want to feel the sand between my toes. Then set her down gently. They walked side by side in a comfortable silence for a while until Wine spoke. Taehyung, I think we should divorce. He stopped and turned to face her. No, just like that. She blinked, surprised by his firm tone. He nodded. Yes, just like that. I don't want to divorce. She looked away, biting her lips. Wine, I and Evelyn are over long ago. On our wedding night, she attempted suicide, so I went to the hospital out of sympathy. She was obsessed. All those days I wanted to find evidence so she couldn't lie anymore. I don't want to divorce you. I just wanted the right time to talk it out. He cupped her face gently. You could have said it. He silenced her by capturing her lips, Wine gave in, wrapping her arms around his neck. But I would accept you only if you wash and press my clothes. She broke the kiss, Taehyung chuckled and embraced her in a tight hug. As you say. And I don't like you. He kissed her temple and smiled. It's okay, I'll make you fall for me. Harder. Let's see. She tightened her embrace.